So, in particular, we will explore today what makes a great coach, because after all, we need to know what it is we're reflecting on. We'll consider what your purpose as a coach is, and that will be very individual to each of you. We'll think about your approach to coaching and enable you to reflect upon that, and then look at some tools that you could use both to reflect in action and also on action. So, to start our session today, the first question that I would like to ask everybody is, what makes a great coach? So if you could all just offer your reflections in the chat function, that would be ideal. So using the chat function, please share, what do you think makes a great coach? And we're getting offerings now in that chat function, and I love that it's starting off with listening. Absolutely agree. And a professional approach. Leadership skills. Ah, okay, a person with knowledge and humanity and pedagogy. Skillful asking of questions, absolutely. And today we will consider, how do we ask ourselves those questions? So the reason that we started with this question today is to reflect on our practice. We need to consider, well, what is our aim and what does a really effective coach look like? Fairness coming through, feedback. Ah, I like this. So what I'm seeing from the conversation here is that a number of people are talking about having a really player-centered approach and following and adapting to ensure that we meet the needs of those players and those athletes that we are working with. So I think that's a really great start. We're going to move on just now and consider your purpose as a coach, or which is sometimes referred to as knowing your why. So a number of you in the room may have come across Simon Sinek before, and apologies if I'm pronouncing his surname incorrectly. So Simon Sinek is a leadership consultant within the States and has a TED Talk. And he refers to the model on the screen as the golden circle. And to briefly put what he puts so nicely across is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So we're going to explore in a second around the why, around that purpose. Now, it's very easy for many people to start with that orange circle, to start on the what. So we are coaches, and we can all say that with confidence. What sometimes we can struggle to put words to is to describe our approach, although many of you have put that in a really eloquent way there on the chat function. And the trickiest bit really is that yellow circle in the middle, really thinking about our why. Why do we do what we do? Why do we choose the approach that we choose? So I'm going to invite you all to reflect on this just now yourselves. And it might be that we just start this process today. We might not finish identifying specifically what your why is. If you have experienced this before, then we'd ask you just to reflect back on that just now. So I'd like you to take the next few moments just to reflect upon and answer these 5 questions. And I'd like you to do that on whatever's accessible to you. So that could be paper and a pen. You might use your computer, your laptop. I don't mind what you use, but I really want you to take each of these questions in turn and really reflect on them and note down your responses. Some of you may have completed that task quite quickly, and it may be for others that it's promoted some real thought and one that you will continue to do beyond today. So Simon Sinek, when we are putting together our purpose, or our why statement suggests that we do so in the bold black writing that's there. So our purpose is to, so that. So if I share my purpose with you, it would be to create positive opportunities so that people can reach their potential. Now, what you'll notice about that statement is it's quite short. And you'll also potentially notice that it's almost vague in a way, in that, what is that specific to? Well, I would like to create positive opportunities for those who I coach, for my family, for my friends, and for my colleagues. Because my purpose is more than one part of my life. It is what drives me every day. So I would invite you to look at the answers to those questions and to notice where you felt emotion or where feeling appeared for you. And I'd also like you to consider where perhaps you repeated words, because when we start to repeat words, it's often because those things are most important to us. So have a wee look at what you have written and see if you're able to create that statement. And in doing so, please remember that for some people it takes many months. So this could be the start of your journey looking at putting your purpose into one sentence, or it may be that it comes to you quickly because you've reflected on that in the past. So I'm just going to give you 3 more minutes on this to note down either that statement, your why statement, or just to consider what I have just offered to you and to take any personal notes that you wish. So I would recommend that everybody has a look at Simon Sinek's work, and you can do so on TED Talks, or he has written a number of books that will help you explore this area in much greater depth and will help you to move towards your purpose or your why statement. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let's continue with our journey and move on to our next circle. So this time we're going to consider our values, our personal values. And in considering those, we consider our approach as coaches. So you can see from the screen that our values define what is most important to us. They provide us with direction, with meaning, and guidance. They can act as a source of motivation and direct our energy. They help us to celebrate our successes and guide us during challenging times that determine our behaviours moving forwards. So we're going to consider what our values are. And again, some of you may have experienced this before, and for others, it may be a first time. So our values are our way of life, our beliefs, and our behaviours. So we've offered one example on the screen there of Glasgow Fever's values. So Glasgow Fever, in everything they do, show positivity, show inclusivity, and it's based on a real foundation of trust through their members and through the wider partners and organisations that they work with. To ask you directly to write your values down cold can be quite tricky at times. So at first, we're going to think about some organisations that you may be familiar with. And what I'd like us to reflect on is what might their values be. So bingo is a game I'm sure many of you will have come across. And our first task I'd like you to do is to look at the words that are up on the screen there, and in the group chat, write down which of these words do you think Apple's values are. So our values are something that we display every day. We should live and breathe these, and others should be able to see them in practice. And I love that people are Zoom experts on here and have gone straight into circling them, and why not? So it's up to you. You can either circle them on the screen, use your stamp functions, or put your thoughts in the chat. So our screen is full of ideas, and that's what I love about working with people from all around the world, is all the different ideas we can bring. So Nike's values, or not Nike, sorry, Apple's values, somebody within here certainly got them right, are simplify, perfect, and delight. And I can see there's some people that are getting it right that are coming through on the chat function as well. Heather, if possible, it would be great if you could clear the screen for us. Please and thank you. The next one I'd like you to consider is Nike. So what may Nike's values be? So again, I would invite you to put that on the group chat. Thank you. I can see people that are coming through here. Ideas are coming forward again, circling or on the group chat. What do we believe that Nike stands for? What behaviors do they show us? And thank you for these that are coming through. So Nike, their values are inspiration and innovation. So inspiration and innovation. Heather or Adrian, again, it would be great if you could clear the screen. Many thank you. Many thanks. And our final one here, perhaps one that is more familiar to all of us in the room, is the International Paralympic Committee. So think about the International Paralympic Committee. Look at the values in front of us. What do you think theirs are? So think about the behaviours they display. Lots of ideas, and I can see there's some are being circled over and over again. So the International Paralympic Committee, their values are courage, determination, inspiration, and equality. And I can see for sure the equality one in particular has been circled many, many times on the screen in front of us, which tells me that that is certainly a value that they display every day in everything that they do. So here are our answers. We will pop past them because we've just reflected on them. So we've explored other organisations' values. Now, what we really want to do is reflect on what are our own personal values. So again, I am going to offer you some time, and I would like you to consider the questions that are on the screen. So think of the word to describe the value you have. Why is this important to you as a coach, or perhaps to your wider club or organisation? What behaviours do you display that show this value? And what will happen as a result of having this value? Now, you'll notice on the screen that this is done as a table, but you can do it in whatever format works best for you. You will also notice that there are 5 rows there. The number of values that you have as a person is very individual. Some of you may have 1 or 2 values, some of you may have 5 or 6. So the numbers there are not relevant. Key is the core value that you hold. So I would like to give you 10 minutes to complete this task because of how reflective this task is. You can write this on paper, or you may wish to use a tablet, a computer, whatever works best for you. I'm just going to move some of the slides back to share the list of values that has been requested on the chat. So I'll leave these up for a couple of minutes. These are examples only of values. Some of you may connect directly to them. And likewise, some of you may have your own words to describe as your values. And both are absolutely fine. So moving back, let's have a think then about what you've just written down. At some point, it would be lovely to meet you all and to meet you all in person while you're coaching. And it would be lovely to play a game of bingo with each of you, but rather than looking at other organisations, to actually have our names and faces up on the screen. And that the words that come up, we can easily put to the faces that we know, because they truly live their values every single day. So we do really need to consider our behaviours and always reflect on, does this truly show the values that I hold most close to me and to my role? So we're going to move on and use our remaining time to consider some tools that can help us to reflect both in and on our coaching. Reflecting in is a process that you do during the event. So something happens, we reflect in practice, and we continue or we make a change. Reflecting on our practice will take place after we have coached, and perhaps we reflect in the car on the way home or notes later on that day. So let's have a look at some tools that you may find useful. We're going to offer you 3 different tools. Some of them may be very useful to you, and many of you will have your own preference. Before I share these tools, it would be really interesting to find out from you all if you have any tools that you use to reflect. So I would invite everybody on the chat function to let us know, how do you reflect and what process do you use? So I'll be quiet again for a few minutes and let you share. Pen and paper, quite right, and accessible. The tools that I'm going to share in a minute or so are tools that you can absolutely use with pen and paper. Thank you, Joanna. So yes, reflecting in, absolutely, we need to do that within ourselves, within our heads, and reflecting later in your notebook. So perhaps going back to pen and paper, or you may be referring, of course, to hardware there. iPad, notebooks. Okay, so we've got lots of physical items perhaps that we're using to reflect. I'm now going to offer some processes that may help you with that reflection process, no matter what you use. So our first reflection tool is a traffic light system. So our traffic light system that many of you will be familiar with are green, amber, and red. Now this can clearly be thought through in our heads, or we can write this down on our paper, our notebooks, our iPads, as you have all suggested. So thinking about your most recent Boccia experience, your most recent coaching Boccia experience, which I appreciate, depending on where we are and the time that we're in, could be quite recently and for others, it may be some time ago. What I'd like you to consider is looking back on that. What will you keep doing in your practice? What was really successful? What went really well? How did it help you to achieve both your goals and your athlete's goals? So what will you continue doing? Our amber circle. What do I need to learn more about before I decide what I'm going to continue doing or stop doing? And our red circle, what will I stop doing? So there's a traffic light sandwich almost. So green, what will I keep doing? Red, what will I stop doing? And amber will help me to decide if my reflections are going to be green or red. So within my notebook, I find this a useful process to consider, and colour coding might also be something that you may use to quickly look back at your notes and consider your next steps. Considering what didn't go well and also things that go well. And what we would recommend, and an approach that is very common throughout Scotland, particularly in schools, is a concept called 2 stars and a wish. So 2 stars, really considering what did we do really well, and our wish, I wish I could have done even better at. And getting the balance there of 2 to 1 of those positives and areas to work on, because it really can support our motivation to continue to progress in all areas. I will offer you another tool just now. This next tool is called the 4 Ps. And just the name, as you can see, is because each part starts with a P, which we hope makes it easy to remember. So when we consider the 4 Ps, let's do this in practice together just now. So again, I'm going to ask you to grab your pen and paper or to use the computer that you're using just now, and initially reflect upon a Boccia session in recent times, or if that was a while ago, even just think of an activity that you took part in recently that you would find a reflection time to be a useful experience. So think of that time and what was the purpose? So when you were leading your Boccia session or you were at an event, what was the purpose of your session, or what was the purpose of that event? Perhaps you could even consider what was the purpose of the meeting that you had with your colleagues. And then we reflect on the positives. So what did you do really well? The next element, points to consider. So what could you do even better next time to improve your coaching or the way that you led a meeting? And lastly, looking at the answers that you've offered to the other questions, what are your actions now moving forwards? Now, my colleague has just very kindly highlighted to me that in English, this is the 4 Ps, but in translation, those words will change and it may not fit quite as nicely into those 4 Ps. But really, the 4 Ps, or the title that we offer this approach, doesn't really matter. It's the approach in itself that helps us to reflect. So purpose, positives, point to consider, and planning for the future. And now for our final model that we will share with you today. And you can see here I've offered a reference at the bottom. And actually this came from nursing practice. But as we so often do, to learn from other fields can only enhance what we do and how we learn together. So this reflection tool asks us what, so what, and now what. So what could those questions be that we consider under each of these? So what, as we reflect, what happened at your session? What did you see, hear, or feel? What did you do? And what did others do? So what? How do you feel now? What was the impact of what happened during your session? What was the impact of the approach that we took on ourselves and others? And we finish with now what? So what will we keep doing and what will we change? So finishing on action planning once again, so that we can commit to the way forward that we choose, the way forward that's best for each of us. So within the chat function, I would just like you to share your reflection on which one of those models do you connect most with. So it might be the traffic light system. It could be the 4 Ps, or it could be the what, so what, now what model. And as Heather says, these are approaches and ideas only. The key thing for all of us is that we self-reflect in the way that works for us. And it may be that you choose to have a go at one or more of these models, and you pick the approach that works best for you. And the beauty of this is that you can tweak these models as well. Tweak them to suit the needs of you, your colleagues, and the teams that you work within. So I'll open that chat function just now. Which of these models stands out most to you? And interesting to see the range of tools that have really stood out to people. And what I can see from reflections is that every single one of those has been useful to at least somebody in this group. And we're all choosing the ones that stick out best for us. So we had an hour today, and we chose to commit to the development of ourselves, to support the teams that we work with. We have self-reflected throughout our hour, really considering what makes a great coach, what is our purpose, what approach do we choose to take to coaching, and finishing up there with some tools for reflection, both in and on action that each of us can take forward. We had an experience of reflection today together, and I very much enjoyed working with you all and for the interaction that you offered in the chat function. And as I said and meant earlier, it would be lovely to meet you all someday. Thank you very much for this afternoon.